Chaos reigns across the land. Dare you claim control? All you need is a talisman, and find a way through the Valley of Fire to the Crown of Command itself, where you will be the ultimate Lord of Power. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and yes, you can probably guess, we are doing another Talisman character guide. Now this is for the revised 4th edition that originally was put up by Fantasy Flight, but now it's all gone back to Games Workshop and all sorts of crazy things are happening to Talisman. But this is not what this episode is about. This is a character guide and we are taking a look at the elf. This is, I believe, number 13 of these character guides. There's 14 characters in the base game. I thought we'd tackle them first, and we will go on to all the other expansions. And just to let you know, we have a playlist, Talisman. Click on that and you can watch all of our reviews, the base game, all the expansions, even the little mini ones, and all of the character guides that we've done so far. But anyway, let's just see if the elf can win a talisman. The elf, just a few hints and tips, hopefully, so you can, if you get the elf, you play the elf, that you can win. Now, as I say, I'm not going to go through the full rules of how to play Talisman. You can watch our base game for that. This is a character guide. So the elf, where's the elf start? Starts in the forest. Alignment is good. Strength 3, craft 4, life 4, fate 3, gold 1. Sounds like the shipping news, doesn't it? That's the starting values, that's the stats. Special abilities. The elf has 3 special abilities. You need not roll the die in the forest unless you wish to do so. If you choose to roll, you must accept the result. Special ability number 2, you may evade creatures and characters in the woods. And special ability number 3, if you are in the woods, instead of rolling a die for your movement, you can move to any other woods in the same region. So, it's pretty obvious, the elf's strength lies in, yes, you've guessed it, hanging out in the forest and the woods. And we'll go into detail about this right now. So the special abilities in detail. Number 1, you need not roll the die in the forest unless you wish to do so. If you choose to roll, you must accept the result unless you use a fate. Because, as you all know, if you're watching these, you probably know how to play the rules. If you have a fate, and he does start with 3 fate, if you roll a die, you can actually re-roll it by paying a fate. And then you have to accept that. So in the forest, though, if you're in the forest, you can roll 1 die and accept the outcome. So if you go to the forest normally and you want to take part in the forest, or you're another character, this is what happens. You go to the forest, you roll 1 die. 1, you're attacked by a brigand with strength 4. 2 to 3, you are lost for your next turn. 4 to 5, safe, no effect. If you roll a 6, a ranger guides you out and you gain a craft. So it is quite a good strategy to actually go there to roll to see if you can gain, get 6 and you gain a craft. But if you are the elf, you don't have to. So why would that be useful? Why is that a good ability to have? Well, it does mean that the forest space becomes a safe space for you to go, a safe place for you to hang out there. For example, if you roll for your movement, now as you probably know, when you roll in Talisman, you can go either way. So if you roll a 3, you can go 3 clockwise or 3 anti-clockwise. So what I do is obviously I check what the space is. Now obviously if there's a dragon one side, and if I land on the dragon and my strength isn't strong enough to take on the dragon, or I just don't fancy taking on the dragon, and I land on the forest, that would be, I don't have to encounter the forest, so that'll just be a safe space. Now sometimes that is crucial because you might be down to 1 life, and that if you landed on a very powerful monster, you might die, and you might not want to get rid of your character, because in Talisman, obviously, if you die, and no one else is on the Crown of Command, you can actually get another character and join the game again. So that is why it is pretty useful, because sometimes you might not want to go to the other way. If you roll and you go to the other space, you might actually just want to go to the forest because it is safe. Now obviously you could go there and participate if you want. As I say, you can roll a 6 and gain a craft. You can use a fate to do that if you want to re-roll. Special ability number 2, you may evade creatures and characters in the woods. Now, it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to fight creatures and characters when you are on any wood space. There are a few wood spaces throughout the region. I can't remember now. I think there's one in the middle region as well. So it says here the definition of a creature, and I just want to make this clear because sometimes creatures, enemies, monsters, they can get a bit confusing with the terminology. But the definition of a creature in Talisman is a creature is any encounter other than a character that attacks with strength or craft. This may include enemy cards and also events, strangers, places, spells, and board spaces. So in the woods, you are pretty much protected from everything that attacks with strength and craft. So again, these are safe spaces. So if you've got a choice of going somewhere and you feel like it's going to threaten you, you can go to the woods spaces. And the third special ability, which kind of combines with the second special ability, did I say special effects? I think I did. The third special ability kind of combines with the second one, which is if you are on the woods, instead of rolling a die for your move, you may move to another woods in the same region. Now that can be extremely helpful if you want to continuously draw adventure cards. And you do want to do this because there's some really cool objects in there. There's gold, when you draw up. Obviously there are monsters and stuff like that, but you can evade them. So you can go from woods to woods directly moving around, and if there's no other card on the wood space, you can then just draw an adventure card and you can hopefully gain the benefits from that adventure cards. There are things like weapons, gold, magic objects. You know the score, you've played the game. It's also especially good if another character has dropped objects or an object in the woods, because normally the way you would try to get that object is by you have to land on it directly and you'd be rolling the die and you might have to spend a fate, and it could take you 3 or 4 goes just to get onto one space. But if it's in the woods, you can just jump to it, pick up the object. Now hopefully the other characters would forget that you have that ability, because otherwise why would you drop something in the woods knowing that another character could just land directly on it? So you're hoping that they would have forgotten. Now there's another good reason why you would want to jump from woods to woods, is that if a place adventure card turns up, so someone else might draw the adventure card and it's in the woods, there's things like the Fountain of Wisdom, or there's a stranger that are in the woods place that will benefit you. So it might say a stranger has set up shop here and you can buy a spell for 1 gold each. And if it's in the woods, then you can just jump to it and you could utilize that much better than rather than trying to land on it by rolling a die. Equally, the Fountain of Wisdom, anyone that lands on there, you can gain a craft. You just take the craft. Again, you would be spending X amount of goes trying to get onto that space. If it's in the woods, boom, you can land straight there. And it also, as I said before, it also means that you are protected from any attack as well due to your other special ability. The downside to the elf, well, you've probably noticed it. It does feel very weak when you start because, compared to some of the other characters, the other base game characters, such as the sorceress or prophetess, due to you got 3 special abilities, which is okay, but they're all based around the forest and the woods. Yeah? So, and you don't start with any spells, even though your craft does allow you to start with a spell. I mean, why would an elf start with a spell, I guess? You could argue that. Yeah, fair point. But it's all based in the forest and the woods. Now, that's only a percentage of the board game, and even in the middle region, there's a few. But all the other spaces, it's like, well, my special abilities don't really take effect. I can't affect really any other character. So it does feel a little bit like, okay. But I guess there is one, sort of counterbalance to what I feel is a little bit underpowered of the special abilities, and that you do start with craft 3 and strength 3 and craft 4. not many characters have that quite combination, so it's a little bit of compensation, but I don't feel it kind of genuinely is. So I do sort of feel like the elf is a bit of a weaker character. But that said, as you know, and this is partly why you love Talisman, there's a lot of randomness that can happen in Talisman. So the playing field isn't as stacked against you as you might initially feel. There are favourite places on the board for good characters. So as the elf, I would definitely recommend you get involved with these as soon as possible, just to try and compensate. The outer region, go to the chapel. If you are good, which the elf you are, you can heal up to your life value for free, or you can pray by rolling 1 die. 1 to 4 is ignored, 5 gain a life, 6 is gain a spell. So obviously you start with 3 crafts, you can have a spell. So that's maybe a good way to try and get a spell early on. Go to the crags as well. You can roll 1 die. You're attacked. If you roll a 1, you attack by a spirit with craft 4. Well, you start with 4. So early on you kind of quite equal. 2 to 3 you lose your next turn. That's no big deal basically. 4 to 5 is safe, no effect. 6, a barbarian leads you out, you gain a strength. So it's worth going there just to try and boost up your strength early on in the game. Forest, now as we said, your special ability, you don't have to participate in this, but it's quite good to do this because it's similar to the crags. You roll 1 die. If you get a 1, you're attacked by a brigand with strength 4. 2 to 3, you lose your next turn. 4 to 5 is safe, no effect. 6, a ranger guides you out and you gain a craft. So again, by flitting between the crags and the forest, you can build up your craft and strength quite quickly, hopefully, if you land on them. City, go to the enchantress, especially in the early phase, because if you roll a 1, you get turned into a slimy little toad. Now you do have 3 fate, so you can, the risk is less. Plus, if you're just starting out, you may not have many objects, you might not have any objects. There is an opportunity. If you roll a 4, you gain a craft. If you roll a 5, you gain a strength. If you roll a 6, you gain a spell. If you roll a 2, you lose a strength. If you roll a 3, you lose a craft. Now, you can't go below your starting value. So it's quite good to go there initially because there's only 1 which is turned into a slimy little toad for 3 turns. But if you've not powered up much, you're not losing much. So it's quite a good idea to go there quite early on to see if you can gain that craft, strength or spell. Go to the runes or oasis. You draw two adventure cards in one go. That's always a good thing because sometimes you might be lucky. You might get a magic object, you might get gold, or you might get a weapon and magic objects. Obviously you might get 2 enemies and you'd have to fight them, but it's still worth. You want to be powering up as quickly as possible in Talisman. Hidden Valley, again similar, but you draw 3 cards. It's the same as the runes and the oasis, but you get an extra card. So hopefully you might get 3 bags of gold. Then you'd question the shuffling technique there, wouldn't you, of the adventure pack. But you might get very cool objects. You might get 1 out of the 3 that's an enemy, but you should be able to cope with that. Places to avoid. The outer region, the graveyard. If you're good, you automatically lose a life. No ifs, no buts, so don't go there. In the middle region, there's nothing really to avoid that's specific for a good character. You might want to avoid the Black Knight because you have to pay a gold. If you haven't got a gold, you lose a life. But that's kind of for all characters in general. The best route to go in the inner region, well, it's more than likely going to be craft, but it is close. You only start with 1 better than strength, so you start with 4 craft and strength 3. So I tend to concentrate on the one that's higher. I tend to try to concentrate on building that one up. But you do need to build up your strength as well, and vice versa. If you build up your strength, you still need a bit of craft. So I'm just saying that you may go the mines route, which I call the craft route, the mines route. So if you go the mines route, you roll 3 die, you subtract your craft from the total and move directly to various bits on the board. You want to get a minus number or 0. So obviously the higher your craft, the better. So if you get a 0, once you've subtracted your craft from the total of 3 dice, you go to the mines. 1, you go to the Plane of Peril. 2 to 3, Port of Power. 4 to 5, Warlock's Cave. 6 plus Tavern. So you want to make sure you've got at least 10. I always say at least 10. Vampire in craft. Vampire's Tower. You suffer blood loss. Roll 1 die to determine how many lives the vampire takes. You may discard any number of follows to avoid loss of life. Each follow you discard prevents loss of life. 1 of the life. So you can push your followers in to protect you. So again, it's quite good to, during the game, build up your followers, and have some that you don't mind losing at that point during the game. because if you roll 1 to 2, you lose 1 life, 3 to 4, lose 2 lives, 5 to 6, lose 3 lives. So again, you might want to build up your lives as well. Pits. Fight the pit fiends. Pretty straightforward. You roll 1 die to fight that many pit fiends with a strength of 4. And you fight them each 1 by 1 until either you are defeated or all the pit fiends are defeated. You may then move on after all the pit fiends are defeated. So again, even though this is the what I term more craft route, you do have to have a bit of strength. But obviously, you should, again, I would recommend you get at least 8 to 10 strength before you try and challenge for the Crown of Command. So a bit of a recap. 1, use the forest space as much as possible, as it is a safe space. 2, use the wood spaces as much as possible to evade creatures and other characters. 3, use the wood spaces to collect unwanted dropped items and also to land on places and strangers and anything else that may benefit you. 4, visit the chapel to either heal up your lives free of value or to pray. You go to the crags to gain strength, go to the forest to gain craft, go to the city, check out the enchantress. She's very helpful. She obviously wants to turn you into a slimy little toad, I would imagine, but you can gain a craft, strength or spell. And 5, more than likely your craft is going to be better. Not always, but you know, it might be. Go the craft route, go the mines route in the inner region. And then hopefully, as the elf, you will win. So hopefully those are hints and tips that will make you win as the elf. I do think the elf is quite underpowered. So good luck. Another strategy, which I don't really like doing, is you get the elf, because it depends how you play it. Some people play where you deal 3 character cards face down. You look at your character cards and then you pick which one you want. So I would probably reject the elf. But if you play it, and we normally play it this way, where you just get dealt 1 and that's the one you know randomly, and that's the one you play. You can kill your characters off, as I say. So you might want to visit the graveyard and kill your characters off, because if no one's on the Crown of Command, you'll just regenerate into a different character to get a better character. You can play it like that, but part of the challenge is, no, I'm the elf and I'm underpowered, but by Jove, by Jiminy, I'm going to win. Anyway, I did say we have a playlist, said that before, check that out. And we have loads of other things on our YouTube channel as well, over 400 episodes. So click the bell, if that's what you do on YouTube now, it keeps changing, to get notifications of when we post up on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a plucky little elf.